All right, the Bucks. It is Talking Buccaneers with me, Fumane, him, Mlungisi Zondo, Simanga Makhubu, and we've got another home debut. Thankfully, it's in preseason. We've got Fenzo with us. And yeah, gentlemen, I've been looking forward to having this conversation with you. 3 preseason games have passed so far. Since the last time we had a conversation, we've played Sevilla, we've played Granada, and much recently we played Al Sadd as well. Now, I'm interested to hear some of your thoughts. I mean, I have thoughts of my own around things that I was observing, maybe some of the things, especially around, progression of the team overall. I'm thinking about, we've seen that players have been getting more minutes. I think that's one. They've got a lot more minutes in their legs. First game that we spoke of, 45 minutes each, 2 teams getting 45 minutes. But we've seen a bit of a progression with regards that some have gotten now 60 minutes here and there and more minutes in the legs. But I think actually maybe let me leave it there. That are there any progressions that you've noted so far? And maybe let me start with you, Mlu, this time. Any progression so far with regards the progression of the team over the last 3 games?
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for the opportunity. Yeah, I think if we look at the 3 matches that we played, you would notice, like you just said, that some of the players in the first match, you saw them getting 45 minutes each in each of the halves. And if you look at the other matches after, it was 60 minutes and then there were subs afterwards. So that aspect is very important because in preseason, it's more about trying to get the match sharpness and fitness levels of the players. So I think based on the test that might have been done when the players came back for preseason, that is one of the things that would inform the training program as well as how each player would be able to participate in each of these friendlies.
Yeah. Simanga?
Sure, Fenzo. Firstly, maybe thanks, folks, for the opportunity, Fenzo. Maybe first, let me just thank the club, Fenzo, for ensuring a good as friends. They give us an insight of what's going on. The content that came from Thomas Mlambo was great, and it also gave us basically an insight of exactly what happens to what is happening to the team. Also, I also like the growth and fate of South African teams where they started taking seriously preseason. I think with our team as well as Bo Galaxy, as well as the Stellenbosch, and it shows South African clubs growing in terms of them understanding the importance of preseason. I think for Kulama games Lawa that we watched, I think now we sort of get an idea of how the team played. We also saw a little bit of variations that he brought. But I think for me, this was for me to see who is possibly likely the first 11, who's likely in the top 20, and who's going to be squad players, and then which projects we need to let go. And for me, I think I have an insight now of exactly what is happening. In terms of variations, we see a little bit of, as I said, even in the last episode, which is still we are playing the 4-2-3-1, but we are playing with a little bit of variation. Especially I liked the Saleng portion where now he was playing in the pockets, which is something different from what you saw last season. I saw also maybe, or even on set pieces, on corner kicks, we're trying a little bit of different things, as well as the dimension of playing Unda on the right and Umthetwa on the left, which possibly I'm not a fan of it. But those are the things that we actually see that the coach is trying to do. And hopefully, he's just only doing this preseason. We're not going to see it in my game because last season also once he downfall was him trying some few things even within our games. And I'm hoping coming out of this preseason, he will have first 11. And I'm hoping in the first 5 games, in fact, I'm looking at least the first 20 players to be there for 5 games and give it a chance and not stop and change so that we can have a clear view. In fact.
Fenzo, just to kind of double click on something that Simanga touched on, actually, because sometimes this is something that I think about, which is that what is the balance between, when it comes to preseason? Because I mean, if you follow the fans on Twitter, especially the very interactive Twitter, there's a vastness of opinions when it comes to these things, and it seems like we disagree a lot around some of these things. And for you, what I would like to ask you is, what do you think is the right balance between, what gets said that in preseason, it's about, Umlu spoke about it in the last episode, and he was talking about the fact that, hey, we are trying out, we're looking at the game model. You'll forgive me, Mlu, if I'm not representing your stance very well, but you were speaking about, Guti, we're trying out the game model. You spoke about weather conditions and things of that nature, but there's sort of this experimental undertone around preseason, right? It's about preparation and experiments. And but what is the right balance with regards? I mean, Simanga touches on the fact that the centre backs were the other way around for him and things of that nature. So I just want to get, is there a balance to say, look, and maybe as you answer that, you can keep in mind that we've played the Al Sadd now, which we lost to, right? And maybe sort of considering that we lost that game, how important is it for us that after 4 games, should we think about the results too much? Is there a balance to think, okay, the 4th game, maybe you shouldn't dwell too much now on it doesn't matter anymore, and maybe we can start to take a bit of the results into consideration? Long question, but I hope you get the gist of what I'm getting. Is there a bit of a balance between results, experiments a bit much? 4th game, are we still supposed to be experimenting and things of that nature, Fenzo?
Yes. First of all, thank you very much for this opportunity. It's a good opportunity for me to be able to join you, esteemed gentlemen, on today's episode, and I'd like to be thankful for their platform. I think, coming to answer your question, I think obviously you speak on the fans. I think especially as people who are active on Twitter, I think you'll see the amount of fan discourse that goes in every week, especially, which is bound to happen due to the amount of fans we have as Orlanda Pirates, that there's bound to be discourse within what's happening. So I think for me, coming from a personal perspective, I'd say it's always about striking a balance between all 3 variables. You never want to go extreme in anything. I think you want to strike, as you mentioned, between the results, experiments. So it's basically that. I think for me personally, obviously, preseason already, the premise, I think people, because this is our first preseason where we've seen all our preseason games, we've seen majority of our preseason games. Now people have been, the club has given the fans an insight into what's happening. But at the end of the day, we need to always remember, what is the purpose of preseason? Preseason is about the coach finding his best lineup and viewing the different combinations that are available to him, so that we can improve, so that we can become better. So I think for me, I would say that I would not bear a lot on results. Obviously, it's good to get wins for the confidence of the players, but do not bear a lot on results, because I think we basically have an even record, because it is 1 draw, 2 draws, 1 loss, 1 win. It's balanced. So don't draw a lot on results, but rather we draw a lot in terms of how you play, in terms of the performances that you give out on the field, in terms of, as the coach puts out different combinations, giving people game time, just to see what works, which players connect with each other the most, which players give you a balance in terms of what you need, in terms of, you look at the profiles that you need for specific tactical game plans, you look at that and you balance that. So I think for me, preseason, I'll never have a criticism if a coach is changing and moving. Obviously, you'd love to see a more settled team, in the fourth game, as which everyone. But I still believe that we do not have, first of all, we do not have a league date announced, and the team recently just went back. So I do believe there's still going to be more preseason games where now you're actually going to see a more structured side, a secure group of about 15 to 16 players, which you can see that ultimately this is what the coach trusts to get him over the line. So don't get too stuck on preseason. As long as you see the combinations, you are fine. Thank you.
Yeah. No, great shout there. But Mlu, I want to press in a little bit on that. Maybe we can keep this segment short because we're going to get a bit into the squad analysis and sort of looking at specific positions, what we think about. Do we have enough there? A lot of talk around who to release, stuff like that. But before we go there, I sort of want to put this to you, Mlu, to say, but is there an argument to say that fourth game versus Al Sadd, and great points, Fenzo. But I just want to push us to say, let's think about this even more, right? And dig within ourselves and to say, Mlu, is there an argument to say that as much as it's about preparation, what you are preparing to be confident about it working going into that first game of the season, whenever it's going to be, Fenzo, whether it be in September or what we hope it's going to be in August. We miss Orlando Stadium, some of us. But to say that going into that first game of the season, don't you want to go in there seeing that, okay, fourth game now, Al Sadd, whatever that we are variating sort of things, it needs to yield results to be confident for us to, as we go into it. I mean, I get the argument about, look, we're experimenting, we're trying out different combinations and stuff like that. But is there an argument to be made that if you're going to be losing still fourth game, fifth game, and maybe let's say we play 7 preseason games, if we lose the 7th one, still experimenting, is that something we can be confident about going into the season, Mlu?
Thank you for the opportunity again. I think, from a supporter's perspective, fans will always want to see the team getting results, whether it is a friendly match or whether it is an official league or cup or CAF interclub match. But from a coaching perspective, I think the coaches and the technical team, they will be looking at it from a different perspective because, as Fenzo said, there are phases, and the technical team would first be analyzing in terms of the fitness levels of the team as a whole and also individual players. And of course, the aspect of performance, because we did also get to see some of the cameras from the Pirates analysis team. So they will take back all that information and it will be utilized in various aspects in terms of trying to see if certain players were performing in accordance, and that will be helping the technical team as well as the players in terms of understanding more when they're doing their corrections in terms of the mistakes that were made. Because if you analyze all these matches that we played, a lot of people were of the opinion that, okay, our build-up play is actually very good, and we saw some glimpses of a lot of great attacks. But when it comes to our defensive aspect, a lot of mistakes, because if you look at actually almost all the goals we conceded, not any of those goals came as a result of a moment of brilliance from our opponents, but they were more self-inflicted, if I were to put it that way. So in my opinion, I think from the coaching perspective, they will take all that information, and obviously you as a coach would actually prefer to have players applying themselves in preseason, which is what we were having a discussion on Twitter, is that the players have to give their all, because these matches are actually going to help these players in terms of going into the season ahead. So now if you're making some mistakes, some opponents may actually even analyze some of that data and they might use it against us as a weakness. But all in all, I'm just hoping that the players would have actually learned, because we did see actually some of the combinations especially in defense, because in defense, a coach would like to actually keep a solid back four that is consistent. So obviously now with changing of personnel, you're always going to have those mistakes because people are not used to playing with each other, but you do expect players to give their all.
Yeah. No, great.
We're performing consistently.
Yeah. No, thank you so much, Lou. Speaking about players giving their all, I'm sure there are some people that use Manga will think haven't given their all at all in their stint at Orlanda Pirates. And I'm going to use that as a segue to go into what I think is what we want to talk about, which is a bit of squad analysis after just 4 games. I mean, there might be still another 10 games, who knows, still to come of preseason, you know. But so far after the 4 games, speaking about some players having not given their all. And for you, Simanga, I think I would love to maybe specifically start in that midfield, which is a very topical conversation, especially at the heart of it. And maybe I'll have all of us touching on that midfield because I think that is maybe the crux of a lot of things. But yeah, Simanga, looking at, who we have, and you'll add if I've forgotten anyone. We've got Spelo Baloni, Miguel Tim, Makhetlin Makala, who got a 1-year extension. I think Tim also got a 1-year extension, actually. But we've got Baloni. I think he's got his contract until 2026. We've got Undlondlo. I think he's got his until the end of 2025 or 6. And then recently signed Slailo Rasibucha. Many people, we discussed that in the last episode, that a lot of people assume that he's maybe coming in as a 10, but we've seen him that, the coach is maybe, foreseeing him in 6. Have I mentioned Undlondlo? I think I have. Karim Kimvidi, some shouts that he can play there. Kabelo Dlamini, likewise, some shouts for he can come in as sort of like a regista. There's a very interesting guy called Football is Life on Twitter who actually made the point, which I thought was a great observation, that, Kabelo Dlamini could actually be used as a Pelo kind of number 6, who's good at distributing the ball. And we know about Pelo is not the greatest of defenders, but he's managed to actually be a great number 6. But yeah, Simanga, otherwise known as Big Daddy, what are your thoughts around, that central midfield position? Do you think we've got enough going into the season?
In fact, I think one of our positions that I was hoping we're gonna actually attend was a central midfielder position. It was one of the 4 positions I wanted us to go and go and sign a starter or a possible starter. I'm talking about a player that's gonna be a plug and play, that we don't need to give him time to adjust because we have enough potential that we sign. Players that are part of the team that we know we need to give them a couple of seasons. Balon is one of them. Kumvudi is one of them. But for me, we're still lacking a long-term partner, Yambata. Somebody who's going to be more or less the same profile as Umbata, maybe a little bit defensive. But now with modern central midfielders, they should be able to say, out of position, they can give you a 6. Then with position they can give you an 8, because in the Pirates is position based, and we are playing with a triangular formation in terms of when we for progression players will always change position in the triangular format so that we can progress play. So we need a person that's able to play. For me, I still feel we still lack that number 6 that is going to control the midfield, that is going to be press resistant, somebody who's got of being able to play long and short, somebody who's going to control the tempo. We need that kind of a central midfielder. And currently, I don't see anybody who's a long-term and also a first starter. I mean, a starter that's going to combine with Umbat. And for me, that is a position that we really need to settle. And it also shows, because if I'm a Umbat, as was Ugdala, into our midfield. And projects that we need to move away from, for me, Zondo is 29 years old, and I think we have tried everything that we can. I don't think there's anything else that we're gonna get out of it. And for me, I'm hoping that will be one of the key decisions we're gonna make regarding that particular player.
Fenzo, is there no argument to say that someone like Ndlondlo and maybe something we're guilty of as fans, who have become accustomed to finishing second, maybe third, is that we are loyal to, and I mean, after the Bucks camp, that doesn't help because we become even more loyal to these players when you see that they are so-called amazing human beings, right? Yeah, I mean, you hear of their stories and their struggles and things like that. Is there no argument, sort of building on that question as the second part of it, the first part being that do we have enough in midfield, but maybe keeping in mind that is there no argument to say Ndlondlo as the fourth option is actually a great player? If he's the first option, maybe, Big Daddy, he's not the best option. But if you have Ndlondlo as the fourth or fifth option, is there no argument to say what a squad player to have? Fenzo.
I think there's a lot to talk about when you come to midfield. I think my first plight with Orlando Pirates for the most recent years is that Pirates, we sign a lot of players, but question is we have depth, but we have quality in depth. It's not good having depth when you do not have quality that exists within that depth. I think we can all agree and say that Talent Mbata is a start in our team. I think we've seen that Jose strictly sticks to a 4-2-3-1, which forms and Talent Mbata, as currently we're discussing the double pivot, we have Talent Mbata. But now you look at another player, you look at it and you're like, who now plays with Talent Mbata? You are looking to play a positional-based system. So that means the profile of a player that you need is a player who has poser. Poser is basically the ability to dictate play, knowing when to pass, knowing when to slow down the game, knowing what type of pass in order to get in order to progress us forward. A person who's going to be a first phase receiver from the center backs, because we play the ball from the center backs. Who receives after the center backs? Because another tactic that I think teams have now adopted is a thing of now we press Talent Mbata, and once you press Talent Mbata, Pirates no longer has outlets to play out from the back with, and now they're forced to go long or go wide. So you look at that and you're like, that means it tells you that you need such a profile who has the poser, who's able to receive, who's able to play. So I think that is one profile that is definitely needed. I think we genuinely do need a partner for talent. Then I look at it, I'm like, obviously we have favors here and there, but unfortunately also that's another thing that I'd like to explain. I hope I'm not going too forward, but also to expand and say, Pirates, I love what they did with another player we found in the forward line, which we'll discuss later, which is Gilberto. Go out and look in the market for those type of profile of a player. You see there's a profile of player that you want, but you can see it is lacking in South Africa. You're not limited to South Africa, right? You rather go out and scout. And then coming back to the question of players like Ndlondlo, Paloni, and likewise, it is, I think for me, when we discuss Ndaba Ithetha Ndlondlo as an isolated matter, we say, personally, I'm of the agreement that it is time that he's let go. I think, as you mentioned, that we need players who are press resistant, players who don't lose the ball easily. But especially for a person like Ndlondlo, whose strong suit is not the defensive part of his game, but rather lies in the way you progress the ball and the way you play the ball. And unfortunately, in a profile like that, you need ball security. And that is something that Ndaba Ithetha Ndlondlo doesn't provide for you. So already for me, and with consideration of age, I think it's a player that we should have let go of. I do not see any part for him to play in the future for Pirates. I think you look at Tim, you look at Makhaula. You are looking at them and like the age profile does not work for you, and also you need succession plans from after them. So it's another edge, and it calls for management to look for more players to add to that. And then as a fourth option, Spelo Baloni is, because if you're being realistic, in such a system where you use two baseline midfielders, you just need 4 players and then maybe an extra player that you're developing from the academy or someone that you deem a development, a potential player. So when you look at it, you already see that Pirates already have 4 currently. That with the exclusion of Ndlondlo, you are dealing with Tim, you're dealing with Makhaula, you're dealing with Mbata, you're dealing with Baloni, and also Mosele, who who also has injury problems on their side. That's why I won't mention him too much. Also, with chatter that he might be loaned out, I think we should not consider rely on him that much. But then it calls for me. Ndlondo supplies to requirements, and also they say that we need a new signing. Thank you.
Yeah, let me give it to you, Blue. Any thoughts around that?
I agree with the gents because I think if you are playing for a club like Orlando Pirates, you have to be consistent. And if you look at the system that we are playing, I definitely agree that the first signing we should have actually made in this transfer window is a signing in that number 6 role. But unfortunately, it was not the case, probably because maybe the club would have felt that a player like Ubaloni would have actually, progressed. But also bearing in mind, Uguti, we have a Goodman Mosele who was on loan at Chippa. So maybe the club would have felt, Uguti, we have players in that position. You still have your Makaulas, your Tims. But I agree with the gents, Uguti, that position, you need a player who's going to be a plug and play. You need a player who's actually going to be able to complement Umbata. But obviously, maybe if you are looking in terms of a player like Undlondlo, I also agree that players like him, Okapinga, maybe your Otla Disas, they have not really lived up to expectations at the club, and you would expect maybe them to be moved on, so that you actually also give maybe an opportunity to some of the newer players to come in, with the hope that they will come in immediately and give good performances. Because unfortunately, at a club like Orlando Pirates, as a player, immediately when you come in, you need to hit the ground running. With the dynamics that are involved, you have to actually try and make sure that you just come in, you perform, because if you don't, the supporters will obviously be on your back, and then you'll be in and out of the team as well if you are not consistent, as we've seen with a player like Undlondlo, for example. So I'm hoping that maybe the club can still maybe make a signing. But if not, we need to trust some of the players that are there, especially a player like Rasebocha. Technically, I think he can give us something, but it will be maybe based on the dynamics. Has he arrived and fitted in immediately into the team? And is he able to perform consistently? Because that is the only thing you need as a player when you are coming to an Orlando Pirates, like players like Abo Andile, who just came in immediately, fitting like a glove.
Yeah. Great observation, gents. And something I want to touch on, and I think we're going to go a bit longer this week. I think we might end up speaking for an hour, which is perfectly fine if people will bear with us, because there's so much to talk about. But Big Daddy, if you can maybe in 5 minutes talk to us about Rasebocha, for example, because I think something that I'm sort of thinking in my mind when I'm thinking, okay, Rasebocha, Umlu has touched on the fact that some players in the past have come to Orlando Pirates and they fit in like a glove, and I think there's no season like like this where players actually need to come to Orlando Pirates and fit in like a glove. I think especially in that midfield, we're all touching on that Talent Mbata partner going forward. And I'm thinking that if there's a season that we need someone to actually come in and be a Talent Mbata, a partner instantly, it is this one, right? And so for that reason, I'm thinking around Rasebocha. I'm thinking about specifically Rasebocha because he's the person that's been brought into the club. He's the one that we see is being played in that 6. Maybe a bit of Baloni. Maybe there's expectation there, but specifically Rasebocha, who comes in as a signing. But also, what is the thinking around the extension of Umakehle and Makaula? What are your thoughts around those things, Big Daddy?
Sure, Beto. Firstly, maybe let me start with what Umlu has touched on, especially players that abafana nabo Ndlondlo nabo Kapinga, especially Ndlondlo, because when he was brought in, he was playing more of a 10 from his previous team. Umefika Jose, he moved him into central midfield. At some point, ngiba lenient to him because I personally think he's more of a 10 than a 6 or an 8. But here we are. Ura Sebocha has come through. We managed to see a little bit of him. There's certain traits that are good that we actually saw, especially his long balls that he was playing. I think he's got a very good pass, especially in terms of long balls that he's able to play on the side of the wings, and I think that's a great trait. That's a trait to have. But for me, I've been saying this thing. Uguti, the Orlando Pirates might not need to come out and tell us what do we want to do next season. But for me, the signings of Orlando Pirates are going to tell me exactly which direction are we going. And when we signed Gilberto, I said to myself, oh, now it looks like our club now wants to go and challenge for the league and also for the Champions League. Because for me, four key positions were needed, and we needed starters. So, but I understand the Makaola in this instance, because I think some of them, they are being brought in or they are being extended on my contracts as well. As because I don't think Uzogniges with 30 games. I think he's going to give you at least 15 full games because of his age. Also, I think also there's some work that they do behind the scenes that we will not be aware of. That's why you need some kind of senior players. Hence, even the likes of Maela, I've been saying he must go, but I thought about it and I said, maybe we need to keep him for the sake of he's a captain, he's an older player. We need Pirates from a long period. And I think people like Bomakaula probably kept, not necessarily more than just be Uguti, they're going to be playing, but it's also the role that they play behind the scenes, which we are not privy of to a certain extent.
Okay, so Fenzo, picking up from what Big Daddy's talking about, he's talking about leaders in the dressing room. He's talking about people that are doing some stuff behind the scenes, and maybe let's use that. And would like for us to actually come back to this. So if you can be thinking sort of in the background that if I gave you one signing in South Africa, if there's none, you can say there's no one. But one signing for central midfield for us to come and partner with Talent Mbata, who would it be? But you gentlemen can think about that. Maybe we'll put that for later on in the show. But Fenzo, picking up from as a segue going into defense now, I think maybe let's pick up on Maela and maybe even look at both fullback positions. He's talking about people that are doing some stuff behind the scenes. I think we've got a lot of players that seem like they're doing some stuff behind the scenes that are playing for us at wing back. Thabiso Munyani is one. I mean, in a lot of positive stuff that you see about Orlando Pirates on the social medias, he's the happy-go-lucky guy, joyful, wonderful, jolly character who seems like he's keeping a tight knit with, the rest of his teammates. We know that he's the one that integrated a bit of Thabiso Libito for us. Is it worth letting go those kind of guys? Innocent Maela, Big Daddy, you've spoken about, he's the club captain. Maybe important for him to be around to pass that baton in terms of what Orlando Pirates is about. Because, I mean, the reality of these things sometimes is that an institution has got a culture, right? And sometimes within the institution, the people that understand the culture of the place aren't the most useful anymore in that regard of, if we take it to football terms, they can't give us very much in terms of quality on the pitch. But how do we quantify the quality of them just being in the place, sort of, juxtaposing it next to the quality on the pitch? Is it worth letting him go if he's not giving us very much on the pitch? Maela, Libito, those kind of, Munyani, those kind of players. Or do you have to keep those guys in the place? And this is me basically asking you the question, do we have enough in our defense? Do we need to look into, bringing in some guys, potentially strengthening? But I want us to specifically start at fullback for now. Fenzo.
I think, yeah. In terms of, I think when we talk about the leadership, I think it is always important. I think important to have leaders in the background. I think for the dressing room cohesion, I think obviously we say behind the scenes, as Bucks Camp has also given us an opportunity to also get an in-depth look in terms of the dynamics that are in play. I think it is always important that in what we consider that at the end of the day, footballers are people. And as with any other things, that there are gonna be people who play their roles in different ways, and some people play their role as leaders. And I think most probably I hear the argument that in terms of when you're looking at a player like Makahleleni Mahaula, who was the captain at Amazulu before he arrived at Orlando Pirates about a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, you would understand that he's already a leader. So you also get the residing in terms of that perspective. Sometimes players are brought in as characters and the effect that they have on the dressing room, and sometimes the impact might as not be as great on the field, but we know that there are certain factors that keep them a bit longer and as they help strengthen the core of the team. And then moving on to the fullbacks matter, I think for me personally, I think it's something that I have strong opinions on. I think certainly left back, a new starting first team quality left back is needed. That is not in question. We need a left back. That I think that along with central midfield should be priority positions for Pirates. We have a glaring hole in left back where Dion Hoto is a player that was converted from winger to fullback. Something a conversion that I talked about previously in the past. But at the same time, I still believe that defensively he's still a liability because of he used to be an attacker, play primarily as an attacker. He still has when pushing forward, he's still more attracted. He doesn't know, he's not yet able to discern whether at the moments where you now pull back from the attack just to protect us from transition, from getting caught on transition, ball security, ball safety, and also playing the right passes. So I think for me personally, I think as much as it's been a decent option, I still don't think that, as we say, that if you want a team that challenges for the league, I still don't think as a starting left back is the profile that we need. Also, it seems we have polar opposites in terms of him and Mahela, where you have one left back whose profile is the strong suit is on attacking, and the other one, the strong suit is defensively. Also, Maela, as much as we might say defensively, it's also at times where he gets caught out of position due to also him being converted from centre back to left back and swapping in between those two roles. So sometimes he gets caught up in between positions, especially in transition. I think I note a lot on transition because more often than not, transition is where you often concede your most goals, especially as a possession side, if you're going to hold majority of possession within a game situation. And we also have Paseka Marco, who has not played football in a incredibly long time. And it is a thing of now you can't most certainly rely on such a player. You also look at Innocent Maela, our captain, who also has a shaky injury record. You are like, Hoto is the only person who always stays fit out of those players. So that arises a need for a left back, a starting left back. You go to right back, right back is an interesting position because I think we have many differentiating views from people from different perspectives, where you have three players basically in that position. You have Thabiso Libito, recently brought in from Chipa in January. You have Thabiso Munyane, who has been with the club for a number of years, but only started playing consistent first team football under Jose at the start of Jose's first season. So now he has 2 seasons with Jose. And then you look at Bandile Shandu, who's not being playing that much. A player that I genuinely expected to be let go off in the transfer window. I still believe it's also time to do that. Considering also we have a player like Jabu Mukone, who's also developing in the DDC. I think he also gives you an element of depth in there. So there is genuinely no need to keep Bandile Shandu. I also think that the right back position is up for grabs. I personally say I still believe we still need to do better there. We still need to sign a new right back and a starter, not project players per se. I think that is a mold of Thabiso Libito. He has been doing decently, but he's a conversion player because of profile. He's a conversion player, and you can still see certain flaws within his game. Thabiso Munyane too, his defensive frailty is also and him being error prone, you often see it cost us at bad moments. So you also look at that and you're like, as much as I deem it not to be a priority position at this current point, I still say that it is something that you should be looking out for and looking at opportunities within the transfer market as to how to fix that. But that being said, I think left back is our true priority. Thank you.
Yeah. And Lou, I'm just going to ask that you unmute yourself as I ask you this next question. And what I would ask you is that, I mean, Fenzo brings up a really great point that we've got Jabulani Mkone, you know, within the ranks. How much do you stunt his development? If you've got, you know, Libito, you've got Shandu, you've got what is his ceiling? And if you've got three 30-year-olds, with the exception of Munyani, I think he's 24, 25, though we still call him a youngster. Very interesting thing, even at centre back, Sasani is a youngster who's 24 years old. How much do you stunt his development, Mukone? What are your thoughts around these young guys? You know, Jabulani Mkone, Matalani at left back. We saw him against Sevilla. What did you make of him? Yeah, what are your thoughts around, you know, left back, right back, but specifically with you? I think I would like to press you on, with regards to the young guys, sort of within the ranks, the young guys who are promising players for Orlanda Pirates.
Thank you. You know, I think if you are looking in terms of those players, the unfortunate part is always the aspect of the level in terms of the DDC as well as the PSL and also some of the other leagues within the NSL. Because now, if you're taking a player who's coming maybe from the lower ranks, you would find that there are certain aspects in his game that still need to be improved. And, you know, the PSL by nature, it's a very quick league. It's fast paced. Matches there are very quick because teams are always trying to catch each other on the break or maybe in transition. So you need to have players who will be ready. But looking at some of those players, there's a lot of quality. But now, with these positions being very sensitive, you do actually need players who will actually come in and be a plug and play. Because ideally, at a club like an Orlando Pirates, you need to have at least 2 players per position who can actually give you the same or more in terms of quality. That gives you a squad of around 22 players plus an extra goalkeeper, 23, then maybe an extra striker, an extra midfielder. And then, you know, you've got about 25, 26 decent players who will always give you consistency. And then now the biggest problem now is that now if you are having players within that squad who are not consistent, so now it will always give a bit of an imbalance. But you need, whenever you're giving these young players a chance, they need to grab those opportunities and progress. Like a player like Mfukeng, for example, he was given an opportunity and he just ran with it. So now, if you are looking at some of the other players, Umadalani was given opportunities, but if you look at in terms of his play, you can see Uguti, you know, he's a player who's coming from the lower ranks and he still needs to adapt. And I'm thinking maybe we will possibly see him with the DDC as well as the other 2 guys, the goalkeepers. Maybe we will see them more with the DDC, because in an ideal situation, especially the goalkeeper, you need to have an active goalkeeper with DDC who's full-time there, probably as a third choice in the first team. And then you've got Uchain and Utelezi fighting each other for the number 1 position. So I feel also in terms of the left back and the right back, we do really need to sign, because Marco and Lebito, Ushando, Monyane, all of them are not natural right backs. So you will always have defensive problems with them. And I sometimes do feel for them, because these are players that are not really natural Gulauma position. That is why you always, you know, you'll find there are weak points in terms of their defensive ability. So that is why I was expecting, you know, we go and get a player like Ufawas Basadin. But now it's very difficult also in the transfer market. That is why a club like an Orlando Pirates has to be able to go out even on the continent or even outside the continent to look for players if needs be, if you don't find a ready-made player with youth development in the academy.
Yeah. Quickly, Simanga, before I come to you, Mlu, a thought is just in my, well, 1,000 thoughts are in my mind. And man, time is really unfortunate because, you know, there's a lot of stuff that you guys have touched on, which, I mean, if I would love to press you guys for more on those things. But Mlu, there's a lot of dynamics you guys have touched. Even Fenzo has touched on it. Going outside, how much do you think the club actually thinks about Uguti? Hey, we've added Gilberto. Look, something that we don't know for sure, especially about these top guys who are doing well in Africa, maybe doing well in their leagues, is what is that adaptation going to be like in South Africa? Because, I mean, we've seen recently, and we should know better, that we've had an assistant coach leave us for the reason that he just felt that it's just hard for me to live in this country. I need to go and attend to family matters and things of that nature. And that's the humanistic side of football, right? And I think we don't know a lot. I mean, again, Fenzo, Bucks Camp revealed to us, and Zondo was talking about, I think there was an issue with his child and this and that. And this is the stuff that's sort of going about in the background, that we will judge these guys on the 60 minutes that he gets in the weekend. And it's like, there's a factor that the head coach might know of, because the player has actually knocked on his door and said, Coach, I don't think I'm coping with this. How much do you think they consider those factors? But this is just a quick thought, and I'm coming to you, Simanga, with something else. And we're going to leave the left back, right back conversation, even though I know you might be itching to say something. And I'm going to be strict to say, don't touch on it. Otherwise, we're going to kill our time completely. I'm going to be coming to you with the centre back conversation. But Mlu, just quickly, how much do you think they take that into consideration to say, hey, we've added Gilberto. Is it wise to then go and add another guy who has to adapt to the South African game, where he's also coming in to be a starter? Yeah, well, how much do you think they pay much attention to those sorts of things? Lou, if you can unmute yourself.
Thanks again, bro. It is an important factor because, adapting in a team like an Orlando Pirates, it's for everyone, whether you are a local player or you're coming from outside. And it's worse if you're coming from outside because, coming from any other country on the continent to a new environment. Firstly, some of the players you would see, like a player like Umaru that we just recently released, probably the language was also a problem. So those are some of the dynamics and the things that the club has to actually look at. But I was glad that we did go for a player like Gilberto, for example, because he is a quality player. I had seen him in CAF Inter Club. I had watched him in the AFCON, and you can see that he is a typical winger who wants to go forward, and he has that element that we really were lacking last season. So the club has to go out and find those players. But in an ideal situation, you would prefer to, whenever before you go into the transfer markets, to have a ready-made player within the structure of the club from the academy. And if you can't find a player that is ready from within, then you do go out as the profile of the club and the stature of a club like an Orlando Pirates. It dictates that we need to compete in the transfer markets for quality players.
Yeah. Big Daddy, I'm going to come to you. Umlu is touching on something, which is that, this aspect of training our own players within the club. And entirely in keeping with that, Utabiso Sesane is another very interesting one for me. But I think just, overall centre-back positions for you, and please don't dare touch on right back and left back. Please, I beg you. Let's go to centre-back, and we've got Thabiso Sesane, we've got Usandile Mthethwa, we've got Thapelo Xoki, who's unfortunately injured, Olisanda, and then we've got Unkosinathi Sibisi. Have we got enough in that position? And maybe I'll press you as a follow-up on Thabiso Sisane based on what you'll say. But have we got enough in centre-back?
Sure, Mfethu. And maybe let me say this, Mfethu. As a profession, as a professional from the project management side, I think we need to understand with a club, when they buy players, they have a short, a long, they have the short, medium, and the long-term goals in terms of the players. So that also we need to also understand, because there are some players that are coming in that we want to use in the next 3 seasons to come. And we need to prepare them for that. And they must have their own kind of plan of how to get there. And coming to answer your question is to say, for me, in centre back, I did not think we have a problem at centre back. I don't think it was our pain point in terms of position that we needed to actually cover. But however, something that I noticed, we actually don't have a left-footed centre back at Orlando Pirates, because even Nonda is right-footed. It's just that he's old-footed. He can play with his left, which is an interesting observation for me, because I'm not a fan of using a right-footed centre-back on the left-hand side, because even twice on our games, we actually saw, because if you've got a player that is right-footed on the left-hand side, the angle to pass out is limited. And we saw Usesane as well as Umthetho doing the same mistake, carbon copy. And for me, that shows that shows my theory of which you cannot have. Now, that also then says, do we really need to go out and actually buy a centre back, especially? And if we look around, there's not so much of left-footed centre backs. So for me, if we are to go out, we have to get a left centre back. And unfortunately, Dottley scored. It was one player that I was looking very closely. And then with him now being signed by our rivals, now we don't have much options in terms of that. Then come to Sesane and Faith. So for me, I've always said, players that come from the development, I will always judge them differently from a player that's signed from another team. Simply because, for me, we have to encourage us getting players from the development, simply because they've got the Pirates DNA in them. Secondly, they understand the club, what it means to play for Orlando Pirates. Thirdly, it's because the players that are behind them in the development, they must look at those players and say, Sesane came from us. He's in the first team. He didn't play the first season, maybe second season. Third season is actually a player that is in instance. So it's a motivation to those players to say you need to then continue. Also, we're also going to attract players from other academies to come to Orlando Pirates, because they see we can actually take a player from development up to him playing a star, even going to being Kubafana Bafana. So for me, Usesane, I'm hoping he gets more minutes, but I don't think centre back is a pain point for now. But it's an interesting observation of this left-footed centre back.
Yeah. Fenzo, I'm going to come to you, and maybe meanwhile you can be thinking around, the centre forward position, Zakhele Lepasa. There's a conversation to be had there. And but before I get to that, I want to press you again, when a Big Daddy, to say, is there an argument to say that we just came from what, gentlemen, we might agree or maybe argue to say, fairly good season last season. Fairly good. All things considered, it wasn't the best season. It wasn't the most amazing of seasons. But, over a period of time, we've done what we've had to do. And I think it's yielded what was necessary. And there's a bit of momentum with us. I thought it was important for us to win the Nedbank Cup final, not especially for the trophies, even though that's important, but because I knew it was going to be doom and gloom if we didn't win that going into this current season. We might have even seen, the head coach, there'd be conversations around, is he even good enough, kind of thing. But I thought it was important for us to, just for the momentum of coming into this next season, that we win the Nedbank Cup, especially for the harmony in the team, because that's a very important thing. That's the 12th, 13th man in the club, that momentum. And so I'm going to say to you that, being that there's a bit of a harmony in Orlando Pirates, the group, this word that the head coach keeps saying. He talks a lot about the group. And by the way, I think that's the reason why people like Makala have been kept. He's trying to keep the group, his warriors together, who've tasted winning a cup together. Let's go on now and build on that and go and win that. And doesn't want to upset it too much. And that's where my question is with you and a Big Daddy to say, look, we're talking about we need a central midfielder, crucial position, core of the team, the spine, adding someone who's new there. And maybe that's why Rasibucha is looked at as much as he is right now, right? If we're going to be adding in that position, we're saying we need a starter. Fenzo's arguing that we need a starter at left back. We need a starter at right back. That's 3 positions now. Can we then still go in and go, hey, we need a left-footed centre back as well, 4th position? How many positions are we going to actually add to go in immediately? And isn't that going to upset too much? So the question is rather around this thing, whether do you think that the recruitment together with the technical team, when they do their report, they're having the conversation to say, I don't know, gentlemen, I have a bit of a background in economics and that. And there's this concept of opportunity cost. It's like there's some stuff maybe that you go, okay, maybe we can forego that. It's not so much of a big deal because we can't address every single issue. That I can assure, even in the market is not perfect. That's the other thing. You're not going to get every single player that you want in the market. Some are going to go to Sundowns, like Keegan Johannes. So what do you do there? Ideally, you have a short list of here's the second option, here's the third. But the question is sort of to say that, do you think there are some positions, and would that left-footed centre-back, when a Big Daddy, be one that we go, if we're going to address left-back and we're going to address right-back, if we scale these things, is the left-footed centre-back something that you would say, hey, we need to actually go out and get a left-footed centre-back, otherwise it's doomed?
No. I mean, the forms and fates, I was hoping we're gonna release. Okay, we released 7 players. I was hoping we're gonna go to 9, inclusive, which is Kaping and Zondo and Otladisa. For me, that is the players that I hope we're gonna add on top of the 7. Then from there, we go out and buy 4 possible starters. It was gonna be a left back, centre back, 2 wingers, which is gonna be right-footed and left-footed. And for me, if we got those 4 players, personally, I think we would be done. Any other player that we're gonna add could be a long-term player, basically, that we want to grow. And for me, that's why it's centre back for me. For now, it's not something that I would say the team must go into. I would say maybe let's give 6 months and then be seeing a January to see if there's anything or if we've got any. But for me, it's not really of a concern to go out and buy a centre back.
Yeah. But I mean, I still want to press you and a Big Daddy, because even talking about squad planning, there's a conversation to be had there that if this is the head coach's last season, how do they build the team? I mean, there's an underlying conversation there. Even as I'm saying it, I'm thinking that it needs for the direction of the club, the philosophy of the club to come from actually, the top rather than the head coach. Because I'm thinking, these projects that you are talking about, Abu Matalani, if he's brought in for a Jose Rivero philosophy, are those signings even good signings? Because he's not going to be even able to eat from those fruits, Jose Rivero. But maybe we can park that one, because I'm just fearing that I wanna ask Fenzo about center forward. And that's another fascinating one there, Fenzo. We've released in really saddening circumstances for me personally, hearing Kemet Erasmus speak like that, someone who we've seen has given his all for the club, and for him to leave like that, I maybe the red suggested, but I come from Liverpool. I've got that Liverpool DNA and love, and we love our people over there. We love to celebrate you when you leave. Bobby Firmino, we celebrate them. We celebrate our own, right? And I think in every way I can think of, Fenzo, Erasmus is our own. He's made sacrifices to come to Orlanda Pirates. just for his love for the club, and we've just released him. Swaibu Maru, whether or not he needs a replacement is arguable because he plays 3 games in a season. So do you need a replacement for 3 games is a conversation in itself. But I want to ask you, Fenzo, do we need a striker at Orlanda Pirates? And maybe you can touch on what you make of our lack of seeing Zakhele Lepasa, in this preseason. I mean, he's been there. He's even done content with Thomas Mlambo. And I think he sent us a cryptic message, or maybe it's just me, the investigative side of me. He sent us a cryptic message today, taking a video of himself with that Pirates kit, almost to say, I'm here, this is my club. Here's the new kit. I love it, type of thing. What are your thoughts, Fenzo? Lepasa, his lack of game time. Have we got enough in, Mabasa and Makhopa? Do we need a striker? I've said a lot, but I hope I've set the foundation for you to go with it and give us your thoughts.
Yes. You go back. I'd like to take us back to a time, January 2023. Zakhele Lepasa goes out on loan to SuperSport United. Come August times, July times, beginning of last season, you go through a time where he gets an offer from Sweden, and the club says, no, we view this player as important to us. So we are like, no, okay, this tells us that Lepasa is going to have an important season for us. Where you also see, then you see him and go and start the season on fire, but basically after the MTN 8 final disappears into oblivion. Basically after the AFCON in January, February times, basically never plays again for the club. Disappeared. So for me already, it tells you something. I think for his career development, for him being 27, I think, or 28, somewhere there, I think it's time to let go. Despite him being from the academy and we love him, but it's time to let go. It is very clear. A player cannot play from January, can't not go playing from January till the end of the season, while fully fit, and go through a full preseason where we saw so many players get opportunity and he doesn't get even a single minute. I think I think also the coach is trying to send a message because he's there in Spain. The coach, if he was injured, wouldn't be in Spain. So the coach is very clearly trying to tell management that this is a player that I do not feel I have a use for in my squad. Please let him go.
Yeah.
So already it tells us, let him go. That means we are left with 3 strikers on our books. Tseguma Basa, Evidence Makhubu, and then we do Laura Diopan. Personally, I think we have a starting striker in Tseguma Basa. You have a decent, not a terrible backup in Makhubu, and then Radiopan also has a third striker, but I still question that the probability is that he might be loaned out. So for me, when you see a coach like Jose who proved week in and week out that he plays a formation with only 1 striker, it poses the question of now the depth, the numbers of depth. You're like, you look at it like Tseguma Basa is going to be your starting striker, Makhubu your backup striker. Now it's a question of the profile of type of player that you need as a backup, as a third player. I think I've seen my Buccaneers saying that you need a new starting striker ahead of Mabasa, but I'm inclined to disagree merely because 10 goals from January to the end of the season, you get 10 goals from Mabasa. He fulfills his primary duties of scoring goals as a striker. You get 10 goals. He is the primary reason why we went to second place. Without his goals, you see us fourth place, fifth place, somewhere there. Those goals were the difference makers. So for me, just to keep it short, and there's a lot I'd like to expand on, but I understand that we are running out of time. So just to keep it short, question is the question mark is on the third striker, Lerato Lepasa. You let him go. Thank you.
Yeah. Lou, you spoke about, ideally 2 players per position, maybe 3 in the striking position. Do you think we need, and maybe you can just say, yes, and if yes, who do we go and get? No. But here's my question to you, and it's a bit layered, this question, is to say, do you think we need to go and get a third striker, or do you think we keep Zakhele Lepasa? But even more to that question is to say, are we just getting a backup option for the sake of getting a third striker, a body? And if there's a top striker out there, is he not looking at Orlando Pirates right now and thinking, you know what, I think Tshegofatso Mabasa is gonna be a guaranteed starter there. If I've got the option to go to Kaizer Chiefs, if I can just say, an example, Ikram Reyners, if he's maybe looking at Pirates and Kaizer Chiefs, I think he's looking at those 2 teams and going, I think it's more lucrative to go to Kaizer Chiefs as a striker at the moment, because I go in there and I'm coming in there and demanding to start. Whereas if I come to Orlando Pirates, there's an argument to say, hey, look, we've got the top goal scorer in the club. So, and does that limit us in the market? That's the other thing to say. Are we looking at just getting a body in that position? And if so, is it necessary to go and get a body, or would we rather stick with, Zakhele Lepasa or Radio Pane and bank on those? And I mean, I saw Gilberto even play as a center forward, and there's a conversation to be had there. But if you can keep it sweet and short, what would you say?
Gents, Mina, I think ukuthi the striker role, it's in an ideal situation, if you had uZakhele Lepasa giving us the same form he gave us, njengoba uFenzo said, the form that he gave us before the MTN 8, he was on fire. He was scoring almost every match. And then if you have Mabasa as well, giving us the same form he gave us from when he came back in January, you have enough quality, and then you've got also a variation of Umahopa, whom the coach has also said, even though he might not score, but he does give him what he wants in terms of moving the defense and creating space for other players to come in. So I think those 3 are fine. But now, if Zakhele Lepasa goes to Spain preseason and he does not play a single minute, what is that telling us? Maybe was it an issue in terms of his fitness levels? Was he behind? Or maybe there's a looming offer. Is he possibly going to leave? Then that actually now brings us also to Radio Pane, who I really wish the club would give a chance, because he's a player, who did so well with DDC. We were expecting Uguti he would come into the first team, but then he was loaned. And then obviously Ama injuries played a part, in terms of staggering his development a little bit. But now he's still currently with us. So I think there's still a question mark with regards to these 2 guys, Ulepasa as well as Radio Pane. But if Ulepasa stays, and Mabasa's there, and they give us equality in terms of consistency, we could be good.
Yeah. Big Daddy, one name, central midfielder. Strictly one name. Strictly.
If we go South Africa.
One name, Big Daddy, one name. Finished. One word.
Bongani Zungu.
Bongani Zungu. Fenzo, one name.
One name. Yeah. Aiden Adams.
Mlu.
I once I do, I just told.
Up the mighty Bucks. Cheers.
Thank you.